Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
MSNBC Lib says it's alarming young whites aren't as anti-Trump as he wants them to be. Liberals still cannot accept the fact that more than 60 million voters chose Republican Donald Trump over Democrat Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election, thinking that voting for a change agent like Trump over an establishment crook like Hillary is somehow unthinkable. They clearly have not learned from their mistake, as evidenced by a left-wing commentator named Jonathan Capehart going on MSNBC and voicing his frustration that a recent survey shows that young white people are not as anti-Trump as he expected them to be. Said Capehart sarcastically, while introducing the topic of the surprising to him survey, "Surely, the forward-thinking millennial generation will deliver us from the sins of their elders. But the survey results, with the apt title The Woke Generation? Millennial Attitudes on Race in the U.S., dashed my hopes of that. As a new GenForward survey of 18 to 34-year-olds reveals, white millennials are quickly becoming the outlier group in this generation." Going through the survey's details, he then stated, "The next warning sign comes in Figure 4 with a straightforward question. Do you believe Donald Trump is a racist or is not a racist? No surprise that overwhelming majorities of African Americans, 82%, Asian Americans, 74%, and Latinos, 78%, say, yes. White millennials, however, were almost split. A saving grace is that 51% said, yes. But 48% saying no, despite all the evidence to the contrary, is beyond worrisome." He later concluded, outraged, and this GenForward survey shows that despite the millennial reputation, white millennials think a lot more like whites than millennials, who are increasingly people of color. Do you think liberals are ridiculous for assuming that young people can't think for themselves and should all automatically be Democrats? MSNBC scolds white people for not knowing history after John Kelly's Civil War comments. The media has been blowing comments made by General John Kelly out of proportion. Kelly said that the Civil War was the result of compromises. This is true. But liberals felt like he was ignoring that the war was about slavery. MSNBC's Roland Martin took this further. He attacked all white people for what Kelly said. "I'm not going to allow 4 stars stuck on stupid to simply go on. Here's a man who's utterly clueless. For him to say, well, we could have compromised, really? We did compromise. It was a thing called United States Constitution, and you know what that said? If you're black, you're 3/5 of a human," said Martin. This is how we normalize white supremacy. Then to say, well, we don't have an appreciation of history. I love this whole deal about how, he was an honorable man. Really? There were abolitionists during that particular period who did not believe in slavery. Don't call them men of their time. He then attacked all people who are white. We have too many people in this country who are white who do not know history and who want to somehow glorify these Confederate leaders, said Martin. I'm telling you right now, they ain't my founding fathers, and they're not my leaders. We need to have real history. Not his story. And I will say to John Kelly, shame on you. And also, you owe Congresswoman Wilson an apology for lying. Don't you talk about honor and sacred and how we treat women when you lie to the American people, and you're not man enough to admit it, he said. How do they get away with this racist trash? Jimmy Kimmel compares President Trump's election to O.J. Simpson murder trial. Talk show host Jimmy Kimmel pissed off half of the country when he tried to blame all gun owners for the shooting in Vegas. He apparently hasn't learned his lesson. In an interview with New York Magazine, Kimmel compared President Trump's election to the acquittal of O.J. Simpson. The closest thing I can compare it to is when O.J. got acquitted. It never occurred to me that it might happen. There was so much overwhelming evidence that O.J. was guilty, and you believe in the American judicial system," said Kimmel. "You believe that, for the most part, if somebody did it, they're going to prison for doing it. We're in a similar situation. Everything Donald Trump is doing and undoing is bad, 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 and it seems so obvious, and it's happening anyway," said Kimmel. Kimmel then acknowledged how many people he has alienated, but he doesn't care. "I think I've alienated more people than I've brought on board. But what I thought was important was telling the truth," said Kimmel. "There are certain things I don't understand, and the idea that Americans wouldn't want to take care of each other when they're sick is one of them. The idea that our politicians would let the gun lobby tell them what to do is another," said Kimmel. Ben Ferguson crashes CNN idiots for lying about John Kelly's Civil War comments. General John Kelly made a controversial statement about the Civil War that made liberals' heads explode. Started Kelly. "You know, 500 years later, it's inconceivable to me that you would take what we think now and apply it back then. I think it's just very, very dangerous. I think it shows you just how much of a lack of appreciation of history and what history is. I would tell you that Robert E. Lee was an honorable man. He was a man that gave up his country to fight for his state, which 150 years ago was more important than country," continued Kelly. "It was always loyalty to state first back in those days. Now it's different today. But the lack of inability to compromise led to the Civil War, and men and women of good faith on both sides made their stand where their conscience had them make their stand," said Kelly. That final sentence pissed them off the most. People all over the media have insulting Kelly and that there is no compromise when it comes to slavery and saying he is emboldening white supremacists. However, conservative commentator Ben Ferguson went on CNN and shut them down. "You had 750,000 people die. It's very obvious in the Civil War there was not compromise. There were a lot of people that said, 'I'm going to stick with my state.' There was a lack of a compromise on slavery, it was a lack of a compromise on taxes, a lack of a compromise on representation," explained Ferguson. "It shouldn't always be controversial to have a conversation about history. It scares me in this country now that we can't even discuss a civil war without someone screaming that this is racially insensitive or, 'That's not exactly what you should be talking about,'" said Ferguson. "Do you think he's right?" "Every shred of my dignity is gone." Megyn Kelly humiliates herself live on air for Halloween. Ever since Megyn Kelly left Fox News, she has just sunk lower and lower. Even she is willing to recognize it. For Halloween, Kelly dressed up as Shania Twain and sung and danced her song "Man, I Feel Like a Woman." It's extremely cringy to watch. She came out in the costume during her show after an announcer said, "And now your ghost. I mean host, Megyn Kelly. Do you know who I am?" She eagerly asked the audience. "Here's a little hint, man. I feel like a woman." If the hint wasn't enough, she shouted Shania Twain. Which I did not exactly nail, but I gave it the best effort I could. See, look. Are you convinced? Look. Look. Yes, right? Okay? Have I pulled it off? I tried," said Kelly. In an interview with NBC's Matt Lauer, who was dressing in drag, Dolly Parton asked Kelly how she felt dressed up as Twain. "Every shred of my dignity is gone, so I feel like I'm home," said Kelly. Kelly also claimed that the costume gave me boobs where boobs didn't exist, a waist where a waist didn't exist, and a flat stomach. "It's all good," said Kelly. Are you surprised how far she has fallen? Podesta threatens to hit Tucker Carlson with a cease and desist. He strikes back in a brilliant way. Tony Podesta threatened to sue Tucker Carlson for reporting things that he didn't like. However, Tucker Carlson hit him back hard. To date, Tony Podesta resigned as head of his company. His excuse? Us. That's right. He blamed us. In his parting statement, Podesta said this, quote, "It is impossible to run a public affairs firm by Fox News and the right-wing media," said Carlson. Well, Podesta isn't just complaining about us, he's threatening us. This afternoon, we got a letter from Jeff Garinther. It's a lawyer with Venable LLP, a big law firm here in D.C. The letter demands that the show, quote, "immediately cease and desist disseminating false and misleading reports about Mr. Podesta and the Podesta Group," said Carlson. It demands we retract and delete all our prior reporting on the Podesta Group and warns if we don't do this, quote, "Mr. Podesta may pursue legal action, including for damages, in order to fully protect his rights." It doesn't stop there. It also warns we will face legal action under the Copyright Act merely for quoting from this letter publicly, as we just did, said Carlson. Podesta's lawyer wasn't trying to inform us of anything, but to threaten us, to shut down our reporting on his client. One lawyer we talked to earlier today said the Podesta people have used this tactic with others before. It's common, it's an effort to use fear to control press coverage, said Carlson. "We are not intimidated," summarized Carlson. "The liberal media bullies President Trump and conservatives all the time. But it looks like they can't take what they dish out." Planned Parenthood makes abortion campaign aim specially at black people. "It's disgusting." Planned Parenthood has done a lot of disgusting things in the past, and it appears they don't plan on stopping anytime soon. They recently created an abortion campaign directed specifically at black people, telling them that it is safer to get an abortion than to give birth. If you're a black woman in America, it's statistically safer to have an abortion than to carry a pregnancy to term or give birth. #scary stats tweeted Planned Parenthood. Between 1998 to 2015, 16.1 million women accessed abortion care, 108 died. BTW in 2011-13, BW accounted for 43.5 deaths of every 100,000 live births. They followed up. Maternal deaths for black women span age, education and income level. Racism, lack of access to quality health care and poverty kill us, they wrote. After trying to literally scare black women into thinking pregnancy is dangerous, they mocked anti-abortion trolls. Us, black moms are dying in childbirth. Also, abortions are medically safe. Anti-abortion trolls, screamed genocide sets web on fire. Us, photo of a black woman saying "I feel so damn powerful." Their lack of human empathy is extremely startling. People were quick to point out the flaw in their argument. 43.5 is not safer than abortion. In abortion, death occurs every time. That's the point. Endgame of abortion is death, wrote one user. In those same years, nearly 100% of babies aborted also died, tweeted another. That means 16.1 million black babies died. A stat you seem to have overlooked, tweeted another.